Part 1. The breath before memory. What if the very act that keeps you alive is also the one you ignore the most? You breathe more than 20,000 times a day. Each breath arrives without command, without question. Yet have you ever stopped and truly listened to it? Noticed its weight, its rhythm, its silence? Perhaps the question is deeper. If breath is always with you, why do you feel so far from yourself? This is not just a biological curiosity. It is a philosophical fracture. We live in an age of acceleration, where the body moves, but the soul lags behind. In the West, we speak of stress, anxiety, and burnout as diseases of the mind. But ancient cultures saw these as symptoms of a deeper forgetting, the disconnection from breath, and therefore from being itself. In ancient Egypt, breath was called the divine wind, a sacred essence known as Ka that animated the body. Without it, the flesh was inert. The Hebrews spoke of ruach, the breath of God, breathed into Adam to awaken life. In India, the Vedas described prana, the subtle breath energy that nourishes both body and spirit, moving through invisible channels. In China, this same life force is known as Qi, and the practice of cultivating it. QiGong is not a fitness regimen, but a spiritual return. Even the Stoics of ancient Greece taught that to master one's breath was to master one's mind. The philosopher Epictetus reminded his students, "It is not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of them." The breath, in this context, becomes the interpreter, the space between reaction and clarity. Modern science is only now catching up. Neuroscientists have confirmed that conscious breathing directly influences the vagus nerve, which governs the parasympathetic nervous system, the gateway to calm, healing, and presence. This is not metaphor. This is physiology. And yet, the ancients knew. So why do we forget to breathe deeply when we need it most? Why do we let the chaos outside determine the stillness inside? Because we have mistaken breath for a background function. But it is not background, it is foundation. And foundations, when ignored, begin to crack. To breathe with awareness is to remember. To remember is to return. You who seek balance, who long for peace not as an escape, but as a homecoming, understand this. The breath is not just a way to live longer. It is a way to live truer. And so we begin, not with movement, not with ideas, but with the silence between two breaths. The door is not locked. It was never locked. It only needed you exhale. Part 2. The rivers beneath the skin. Layer 1. The nameless river. If everything in your life flows, thoughts, emotions, relationships, then why do you feel stuck? This is the paradox. Motion surrounds us, but we remain immobile within. We live in an age of hyperconnection, yet internally we are fragmented. The body moves, but the spirit forgets its direction. What then has been severed? The answer lies beneath awareness, flowing where your attention rarely reaches. The rivers of energy moving through your body, invisible yet vital. In Chinese medicine, they are called meridians, channels through which qi, or life energy, travels. But this concept is not uniquely Chinese. In India, the Upanishads speak of nadis, subtle pathways of prana, the life breath that sustains consciousness. In Japan, qi flows through the meridians of Reiki. In ancient Egypt, the Ka was believed to circulate within the body's spiritual anatomy, sustaining the link between the physical and the divine. The Mayans described invisible channels of force within the body, activated through ritual breathing and dance. Even indigenous American traditions describe energy centers aligned with breath and rhythm, connecting individuals with the greater life force of nature. Across civilizations, a singular truth emerges. Human beings are not solid objects. We are systems of flow. Stagnation, in this view, is not metaphorical. It is literal. When energy stops moving, so does healing. So does clarity. So does joy. Modern science now mirrors this ancient truth. Research in psychosomatic medicine reveals that unresolved trauma often manifests as chronic tension and inflammation, blockages. In other words, the nervous system, when trapped in cycles of anxiety, restricts blood flow, oxygen exchange, and emotional regulation. What the ancients called blocked qi, we now call dysregulation. 2 languages, 1 river. The breath, then, is more than inhalation and exhalation. It is the oar that guides this river through its course. To breathe without presence is to drift. To breathe with awareness is to return to the helm. But here is the deeper mystery. These rivers have no names, no map, no straight path. Each person's energy flows differently, shaped by memory, emotion, ancestry. That is why no teacher can give you the entire path, only the first step. The rest must be felt, breathed, and remembered from within. So the question is not, where is my energy blocked? The real question is, what part of me has forgotten how to flow? To answer that, you do not need more movement. You need stillness, the kind that listens. That is where you will hear the river's voice, and it may speak your name, or it may remain silent. But either way, it will move. Layer 2. The inhale that listens. If silence could breathe, what would it say to you? Breathing is the most constant act of your life. You did it before you had words. You will do it after thoughts dissolve. And yet, for most, breathing is unconscious, unnoticed, automatic, as if life itself had been placed on mute. But here lies a paradox. That which sustains you is also the easiest to ignore. Across ancient civilizations, the breath was never considered mere biology. It was consciousness itself in motion. The Sanskrit term prana does not simply mean air. It refers to the vital force that animates all things. To breathe, in the Vedic worldview, is to exchange not just oxygen, but presence, a cosmic dialogue between the individual and the infinite. In the Hebrew tradition, the word neshama links breath directly with soul. In Greek, pneuma meant both spirit and wind, the unseen mover of life. Native Hawaiian teachings speak of ha, the sacred breath exchanged in greeting, symbolizing unity and mutual recognition. Even Christian mystics referred to the Holy Spirit as the breath of God. In all these traditions, breath was not about survival. It was about alignment with self, with nature, with the divine. Today, science validates what sages intuited. Research shows that conscious breathing activates the prefrontal cortex, the seat of awareness, while downregulating the amygdala, the brain's fear center. This is why deep breathing brings calm. It is not merely psychological. It is neurological. It is real. But true breathwork does not begin with control. It begins with listening. There is a kind of inhale that waits. It does not rush in to fill. It receives. It is attentive, not assertive. This is the breath of awareness. The breath that notices your fear before it grows. The breath that pauses before you react. The breath that does not conquer the moment, but meets it. In Taoist thought, this is tuna, to inhale and exhale in accordance with the rhythm of the Tao. Not forced, not timed, but synchronized with the pulse of the cosmos. To inhale with awareness is to remember that breath is not yours to own. It is borrowed, gifted, shared. Ask yourself, when was the last time you truly felt your own breath, not as air, but as knowing? Because every inhale holds a question, and every exhale, perhaps, a reply. To live without listening to the breath is to live without hearing your life. And yet, it listens always, even when you do not. The breath does not demand your attention. It waits for your return, quietly, patiently, until one day, perhaps today, you finally hear it whisper, "Welcome back." Layer 3. The three ancient breaths. If you were never taught how to breathe, then who have you been all this time? It is a haunting question. For something so essential, so intimate, so constant, why were you never shown its true power? You learned to speak, to walk, to calculate, but not to breathe. Not with intention, not with reverence. And yet, in the ancient world, breath was not merely a biological process. It was a sacred art, with forms, with rhythms, with purpose. Across cultures, three fundamental styles of breathing emerge like echoes from the same origin. In Taoist practice, this is the foundational breath. Inhalation begins in the belly, engaging the diaphragm, expanding downward rather than upward. They mirror the human journey, first to stabilize, then to purify, and finally to release. In India, it is known as yogic breathing, used to draw prana into the lower chakras, anchoring the self in stability and presence. Do you inhale out of habit or from presence? In Taoism, this is Ziren Huxi, to breathe as nature breathes, without interference. The Inuit shamans believed that when one achieves harmony with spirit, breath becomes effortless. In Sufi mysticism, the advanced seeker does not manipulate breath. He disappears into it. Here, the goal is not mastery, but trust. You allow the body to breathe as it was always meant to, guided not by ego, but by rhythm. Modern science supports this. Diaphragmatic breathing improves oxygen exchange, reduces blood pressure, and lowers cortisol. But beyond physiology, it reconnects you with gravity, the invisible force that keeps you close to the earth and to yourself. The first is abdominal breathing, the breath of grounding. The Taoists called it breathing like drawing silk, smooth, continuous, without break. In Japan, Zen monks practice Okyo chanting with seamless exhalation, training the breath to be an uninterrupted flow. In ancient Egypt, priests used breath-based rituals to align internal rhythms with cosmic cycles. The breath becomes not just functional, but beautiful. It teaches patience. It teaches precision. It trains the nervous system to respond with grace instead of panic. The second is silk breath, the breath of refinement. The third is natural breath, the breath of surrender. After practice, after control, comes the return. These three breaths, grounding, refining, surrendering, form a triad. Ask yourself, which breath do you live in? Do you breathe only to survive or to remember? Because breath, at its core, is not just air. It is alignment. And perhaps the greatest tragedy is not to run out of breath, but to live an entire life without ever truly taking one. But now, you know the three. They wait inside you, not as techniques, as doors. Which one will you open first? Layer 4. The Meridians, rivers beneath skin. What if your pain is not a signal of damage, but a message from a river that stopped moving? We are taught to see the body as a machine. Muscles pull, bones support, organs process. But few ask the deeper question, what connects it all? What makes the heart beat in sync with emotion? What makes tears fall when memory stirs? What moves through you when you feel both joy and sorrow in the same breath? Ancient traditions answered without hesitation: energy. In traditional Chinese medicine, this energy is called Qi. It flows through a vast network of channels called meridians. These are not veins or nerves. They are unseen rivers, pathways of life force. There are 12 primary meridians, each corresponding to a vital organ. When the Qi flows smoothly, health follows. When it stagnates, illness takes root. This idea is not unique to China. In India, the yogic texts describe nadis, subtle channels through which prana moves. The three most significant are Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna, governing left, right, and central energy flows. In the Middle East, Islamic medicine speaks of Ra, a soul breath circulating through the body's centers. The Kabbalists of Jewish mysticism map energy through the tree of life, connecting spiritual emanations with bodily functions. In West African healing systems, energy is carried through rhythms and breath, passed through lineage and vibration. Even modern physiology now nods toward this ancient map. Fascia, the connective tissue surrounding muscles and organs, is now recognized as a continuous web that transmits force, emotion, and sensation. Some scientists suggest that the meridians described in classical texts correspond with fascial lines. Different vocabulary, same insight. Pain, fatigue, and anxiety often have no clear cause on X-rays or blood tests, but they have location. They have rhythm. They speak. They point to rivers unseen, asking to be cleared. QiGong does not treat symptoms. It clears the stream. When you breathe with awareness, move with intention, and stand still with purpose, you become a conduit. Energy begins to flow again. Heat returns to cold limbs. Tears fall without trauma. Thought slows. And in this clearing, the meridians awaken, not as ideas, but as realities. The ancients were not naive. They knew what we forgot, that the body is not just flesh. It is flow. So ask yourself, what rivers have I dammed within myself? What grief have I buried that became stiffness? What truth have I withheld that turned to pain? The meridians wait, not as mythology, as memory. And memory always finds its way back to the source. Let it flow. Layer 5. The forest that breathes with you. If nature is alive, not as scenery, but as sentience, then when you breathe in a forest, who is breathing who? We are taught that humans are separate from the natural world, that trees are objects, that air is inert, that the earth is silent unless spoken to. But what if this is not knowledge, but amnesia? Across ancient cultures, the breath was never viewed in isolation. It was a bridge, not just between body and mind, but between human and cosmos. To breathe was to participate in the living rhythm of nature. In Taoist thought, the breath of the practitioner must align with the breath of the earth. Mountains exhale in winter, rivers inhale in spring. QiGong, when practiced outdoors, is not just more powerful, it is more true, because your lungs do not end at your chest. They open into the sky. In the Andean traditions of Peru, the concept of Semi refers to pure living energy that flows through sacred landscapes. Practitioners of Pakokuna inhale this subtle force during mountain rituals, believing that peaks and plants possess consciousness. The forest is not decoration. It is dialogue. In Aboriginal Australian cosmology, the dream time speaks of songlines, invisible paths across the land that sing with ancestral presence. Breath, when in tune with the land, awakens these pathways. Every step, every inhale, becomes an act of remembering. Even in medieval Europe, the Celts revered groves as living temples. Oak trees were seen as guardians of breath and spirit. Their rustling leaves were not random noise, but encoded speech. Modern science now validates the intuition. Forest bathing, or Shinrin Yoku, has been shown to reduce cortisol, enhance immune function, and increase heart rate variability, all through exposure to trees, wind, and soil. Phytoncides, the aerosols emitted by plants, are inhaled into our bloodstream, where they calm inflammation and elevate mood. You do not just feel better in the forest, you become more whole. But the real miracle is subtler. When you breathe with a tree, your rhythms begin to synchronize. You exhale carbon dioxide, the tree inhales. The tree exhales oxygen. You inhale. This is not poetry, it is physiology. And yet, it is also prayer. To practice QiGong in nature is not about escape, it is about integration. The wind becomes your teacher. The bird becomes your metronome. The earth becomes your anchor, and you, the so-called separate self, begin to dissolve. Ask yourself, when did you begin to believe that you stood apart from the forest? Because the truth is, the forest never stopped breathing with you. It was only waiting for you to breathe with it. Now listen, the trees are still speaking, and they know your name. Part 3. The stillness that moves. Conclusion. The stillness that moves. If silence is not the absence of motion, but the source of it, then are you truly still when you stop moving? We often imagine stillness as escape, as rest, as the opposite of action. But what if stillness is not where things end, but where they begin? The deepest rivers make the least noise. The most powerful breaths are the softest. The eye of the storm is not empty. It is precise. Across spiritual traditions, true movement is born from inner stillness. Stillness becomes a gate, and beyond it, the pulse of all things. In Zen Buddhism, monks sit for hours without shifting, not to stop the world, but to feel it turn through them. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes mighty when it retreats inward, not away from life, but into alignment with it. No movement, yet all potential. No noise, yet full understanding. Stillness was clarity. Stillness was power. In ancient Greece, the Stoics did not equate stillness with inaction, but with right orientation. In Hinduism, samadhi, the final stage of meditation, is a stillness so deep it merges the individual with the absolute. In that stillness, they met their true selves. Studies on flow state reveal that peak performance occurs not under tension, but under relaxed concentration, a paradox of calm intensity. A subtle current, a gravity drawing you inward and outward at once, not contradiction, integration. The brainwaves of elite athletes, musicians, and monks converge in the same low-frequency range. Stillness, it seems, is not the absence of action, it is coherence. In the desert traditions of early Christianity, the Desert Fathers withdrew not to avoid the world, but to confront it in its rawest form, silence. Modern neuroscience echoes this. So what does this mean for you? The seeker who has breathed deeply, listened within, followed the meridians, and stood beneath the breathing forest? It means this: your journey does not end with knowledge. It deepens into presence. To move in the world without being moved by chaos. That is the art. To act with precision, yet without force. That is the breath. Stillness is not retreat. It is readiness. And now something shifts. Not outside, but within. You feel it. So here is the final paradox. You are now still, but nothing is static. You are now silent, but everything speaks. The breath that brought you here has not ended. It has only turned and waits to rise again. You who have walked this far, you who have listened and remembered, you may now begin. Because the path does not end. It moves with you.